everybody, and welcome back to episode 4. We are talking about the witch's altar, the altar tools, and we're even going to be sprinkling in some Wiccan rituals. So, all the links that I used for my research will be down below, like always. Thank you so much if you've been watching up until now, and I've been really nervous about how this podcast would do. And when I'm filming this, it still hasn't went up yet. But I know, because I've been talking about it on my Facebook group, and I've got a lot of love, so I think it's going to be doing pretty well. So I'm very excited. But I'm still nervous. It's just because I put so much into it, but you guys get it. So I'm not going to go too hard. But I'm really excited for today's video. This one actually wasn't going to be what I was going to do. I was going to do an episode over Samhain and do like a brief overview of the Sabbats, but I miscalculated how many Thursdays there were in October, so I needed 5 episodes instead of 4. So I went ahead and put this one in. It was going to be after Samhain, but like within a few days, like it would be like episode 8 or something. But I'm going to do it now. But yeah, I wasn't expecting that, and then I looked at the calendar and I realized that I needed another episode. So if you hear that noise, it's my chair. I'm not making weird noises, I promise. I just have a creaky chair. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, whether the occasion is a Sabbat or an Esbat, or a milestone like a hand fasting, which is a wedding, an initiation. I'm sorry if I sound weird. I can't speak today. Or if it's an end of life ceremony, covens and circle members. See, I can't speak. Covens and circle members will gather to worship together to honor the goddess and god and celebrate the wonders to be found in the ongoing cycles of life. While most Wiccan rituals are held in private, some covens will occasionally hold theirs in public, so that all who wish to observe can come out and learn more about the craft. Many Wiccan circles do the same and may even invite the public to participate. Of course, solo rituals they're no less important. And solitary Wiccans know that as they worship at each point along the wheel of the year, they are adding their personal light power to the collective magical energy of these special occasions. So whether you're in a coven or not, you're still adding something. You're still important. Your energy is still very much important. So please don't feel like you have to run out and get a coven. I'm going to do an episode whether or not I'm going to do like the pros and cons of covens, because I personally am in one, but please don't feel like you need one. So, because your practice is supposed to be personal to you. So that's just what that's trying to say. But the content of any Wiccan ritual depends on the occasion. So like Esbats or full moon celebrations are focused solely on the goddess, while Sabbats honor the co-creative relationship between the goddess and the god. Despite all the variations, there are a few basic elements that tend to be included in what we might call a typical ritual. First, there is a purification, both of the celebrant and the place where the ritual is held. It can happen in the form of a ritual bath, smudging ceremony, to remove any unwanted energies from the ritual space, whether it's like an outdoor area or inside a home. Smudging involves the burning of sacred herbs like sage, rosemary, and or lavender, and setting up the altar will come next. Some Wiccans are able to keep an altar permanently set up in their homes, but even in this case, it will likely be decorated differently depending on the occasion, such as bringing in fall foliage for Mabon, which is the autumn equinox, or Samhain, which is also known as Halloween. The altar is arranged with various Wiccan tools, symbols, and offerings laid out according to any one of a number of traditions. I'm sorry if I'm stuttering. I don't know what's going on with me today. I already filmed so many videos, so that might be it. So I'm really sorry if my voice is really shaky. I'm not trying to have it be shaky. But what comes next is the casting of the circle, which is an act that creates a boundary between the sacred space and the ordinary mundane world. The altar is typically at the center of the circle, with plenty of room for all involved to work freely, within the circle, with no accidental stepping outside of the energetic boundary. The circle may be marked with sea salt, a long cord, several stones, herbs, or candles. There are many methods for circle casting, which you can read more about in the links that I have down below. Once the circle is cast, the invocations begin. And here the order can vary, but typically the god and goddess are invited to join the ritual, and then the four elements, which is earth, air, fire, and water, are invoked, as they are the raw materials that make up all of existence. In many traditions, the fifth element, Akasha or spirit, is also called in. In other traditions, this step is known as the calling of the quarters, and the four directions, north, east, south, and west, are addressed, either instead of or in addition to the elements. So, and I'm not Wiccan, so I don't do Wiccan rituals, so when I was doing my research, I was learning about this with you, and I thought that was really interesting. It'd be really interesting just to watch a ritual. It just sounds like it'd be really powerful. I feel like there'd be so much energy, like it'd just be something so incredibly awesome to witness. If you've ever been a part of one, let me know how that was, because that just sounds so cool. But I just want to let you guys know I'm not Wiccan, and so I never do those rituals. But once those steps have taken place, the heart of the ritual begins. First, the intent of the occasion is stated, whether it's to celebrate a Sabbat and Esbat, or perhaps to petition the god and goddess on behalf of someone who needs healing or some other kind of assistance. Magical spell work can indeed be the focus of ritual, but many Wiccans will do this separately from Sabbath celebrations to keep the focus on the god and goddess during Sabbats. After the intent is stated, the main body of the ritual may consist of various activities. The focal point may be the performance of a ritual, such as reenacting scenes from ancient myths or poems, or other liturgical material, depending on the traditional Wicca the group is following. See, like, it sounds just so fun. It sounds, I don't want to say like a party, but it just sounds so fun. It would be so cool to be a part of this. But solitary Wiccans can also read from ancient mystical texts or compose their own poetry for the occasion. So even if you're not a part of a coven, please don't feel like you're being left out. You can still do it. So I don't want anybody to feel like they're being left out, because even in my research, it even say that you can still do it. But chanting, singing, dancing, and or other ritual gestures may be part of the proceedings, as might simply reflecting informally on the blessings of the season. Prayers might be offered whether they are personal or on behalf of others. In fact, it's common in some traditions to use a ritual space to intend for the benefit of an entire community or even all of humanity. In many traditions, a ceremony known as cakes and ale, or cakes and wine, is an important part of Wiccan rituals. Food and drink are offered and symbolically shared with the god and goddess, typically at the end of the body of the ritual. Although some traditions begin with it, the ceremony connects the spiritual plane with the earth plane and helps to ground and center the participants before closing the ritual proceedings. When it's time to end the ritual, the elements and the god and goddess are formally thanked and released, and the circle is closed. So there's just like so much to it. There's prayers, there's dancing, there's chanting, there's poetry. There's just so much. There's calling of the elements. There's just so much to these rituals, and I wonder what it's like to be in one, to experience it. I know I keep saying that over and over. I just think it would be so neat. But just about every religion incorporates sacred objects into its observance and practice, whether it's special vestments worn by religious officiants, statues of deities honored at shrines, candles, amulets, chalices, or other symbolic items. People have been creating and utilizing physical artifacts or tools in order to create and maintain a spiritual energy and focus on their ritual practices. Wiccan ritual tools, and even though I'm going to refer to these tools as Wiccan ritual tools, and just tools interchangeably, but don't feel like you have to be a Wiccan to use these tools. They're just tools to use in witchcraft, Wicca, whatever. So Wiccan ritual tools are used to focus and direct spiritual or psychic energy for the purposes of connecting directly with the divine. There's a subtle but important distinction that between this practice and the use of symbolic objects in other religions. Wiccans can recognize that they share in the co-created powers of nature as embodied by the goddess and god, rather than being completely subject to the will of a higher power. Um, Therefore, the tools of Wiccan ritual are both symbolic and practical, as each object and each action performed within the circle of sacred energy is deliberately intended to harness and direct this co-creative force. So everything that's used has a reason, and it's not just Wicca. Even if you don't identify as Wiccan, your tools should still have meaning to you. You should still have a reason for using them. It should be tailored to your own practice. So don't just use something because you think other people are doing it or because they personally use it. Tailor it to your own. Tools are used to invoke and welcome deities and the energies of the elements, to perform magical work, and to protect against unwanted energetic influences, among other functions. It's important to recognize, sorry, that was my notifications. It's important to recognize that the tools don't have magical powers themselves, but they work as conduits of the personal power of the witch or Wiccan that uses them. So it's not tools themselves that are magical, it's a conduit, it's transferring the energy. So finding the perfect spot for a permanent altar can be difficult, and altars are often temporary setup for specific holidays or rituals. A beautiful altar cloth is often changed for each Sabbath, and some Wiccan beliefs universal energy is seen as dual, both masculine and feminine. Altar statues are often used to represent the duality through an image of a god or a goddess. I know that some people that are Wiccan or not, they use statues of god or goddesses specifically, even if they don't actually believe that they are, I want to say real, not in like an actual form. I don't know if that makes sense. This next thing I'm going to butcher so bad. And Athame, Othame, I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's a double-edged small dagger. Is used to ritually cut and direct energy. I don't really use one. I use other things. But most Wiccan beliefs say it should never be used to draw blood. A bowline is a working blade used to cut herbs, cords, and other items during Wiccan rituals. Some traditions use swords instead of, and most consider the dagger as a symbol of the element of air. Candles are used in many religions both for the symbolism of fire and light. An altar often includes a central altar candle as well as candles for the god and goddess and for a specific spell or ritual symbolism. A cauldron represents the womb of the goddess, a place of birth or creation, and is often used in spells and rituals. Many beliefs give thanks and offerings to the gods using a lovely offering bowl. So I admitted that I don't have that dagger. It's tailored to my own preference. And how I do my rituals or spell work is probably not how other witches or Wiccans do theirs. But moving on, a ritual chalice is used in Wicca as a vessel for pure water and a symbol of the womb of the goddess. Most Wiccan rituals end with the eating of cakes and the sipping of wine or water from the sacred chalice. Salt and other spell ingredients are often placed on the altar in small vessels for use during the ritual or Wiccan holiday. A central pinnacle on the altar symbolizes earth and is often used as a place to charge herbs and other spell ingredients or crystals and gems for use during your ritual. Brooms are used in the ritual to sweep clean an area of negative energy before a ritual. Wands direct energy and are often used in place of the dagger. I'm saying the dagger because I can't actually pronounce the name, and I already embarrassed myself, so. But a major influence on modern Wicca was the British occult revival in the late 1800s, which saw the rise of secret societies like the Freemasons and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. These groups, drawing influence from medieval magical sources such as the Key of Solomon, practiced various forms of ceremonial magic that involved the use of ritual tools. For these tools in particular, the chalice, the dagger, the wand, and the pinnacle were adopted into traditions of witchcraft and later became known as Wicca. Other tools came from older influences such as Celtic pagan traditions involving the cauldron and the broom, and incense, which has been used around the world since before recorded history. No matter how you acquire them, it's crucial to clear your tools of any residual energy from their former environments and consecrate them for purpose of ritual practice. You don't want any bad energy or less than good energy that could be on them from the store when you do your ritual. So don't just go buy them at a store and assume they're good. Come home and make sure that you've been cleansed. because you don't want whatever energy was on them before to be involved in whatever you're doing. That is very important. And just make sure you always clear the energy. So a lot of businesses do offer specially consecrated items. It's still best to put your own energy into your tools. I mean, it's going to be your tools, so it's better to rely on your energy than someone else's. And once you've taken the step, it's best to store your ritual tools together in a private space where their sacred energy will not be mixed in with the mundane objects of everyday life. So, I also do that. I don't like mixing my stuff. I like to keep them very separate. So, but as far as what you need for your rehearsed ritual, many Wiccans and witches agree that starting with one tool for each of the elements is the best approach. This generally means having a pinnacle for earth, though a bowl of sea salt will do, a chalice for water, a wand for air, and a dagger for fire. What matters most, however, is that you feel an energetic connection with the tools you're using, so don't start with any tools that don't feel right to you. Remember, for all physical action in the ritual, the power is really in the non-physical, the energetic connection between you and the divine. The truth is that tools are not even really necessary. You can interact with the energy without them, simply drawing on their personal power and focused attention, but that takes a lot of time and practice. But if you're someone who really leans toward pattern symbols and symmetry, those tools can help us train and keep our focus where it needs to be, on the energetically charged base of the sacred circle. And a majority of people use those tools anyway, so it's really just, like I said, up to you. Don't feel like you're pressured into using anything because other people might. It's all up to you. It's all tailored. It's all tailored to your own self. So just make sure you put your energy into it. But now we're going to get into a very important tool, which is a Book of Shadows, which is basically like a modern grimoire. So this is a very treasured and a private tool. This one is extremely personal to you. It's a book of your practice, and it's called the Book of Shadows. It's unique to each individual. It's not going to be the same as everyone else's, and it's where ritual, protocols, prayers, poems, spells, and other useful and inspiring information is kept. For covens, it is the ultimate handbook for practicing with one's fellow Wiccans, and the material in its pages have been passed down through the decades from the very beginnings of modern witchcraft. For solitaries and eclectics, it's a place to build and grow one's practice at a time. A Book of Shadows is somewhat like a journal, but it's a spiritual and magical focus. It includes spells, names of dates of Sabbats and Esbats, incantations, and other ritual language, lists of magical correspondence for colors, crystals, and herbs, and a host of other useful magical stuff. So it's really gonna hold all the stuff that you're gonna need to practice your practice, to practice your craft. So it's very important that you get one. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be like the spooky, witchy looking thing. I literally have a notebook, like a basic little notebook that you would take to school, and in there I printed out some stuff, taped it in there, wrote my own notes. It's still a work in progress, so it's very it's very handmade. So you don't need like a fancy book at all. And I'm pretty sure it was it was pretty sure it's a journal that I had for a really long time, so you don't need anything fancy. But it's basically a modern grimoire, a term used in the 19th century to describe texts covering various occult topics such as magical theory, description of rituals, instruction in spellwork and divination systems, mystical philosophies, and other esoteric information. Examples of grimoires can be found throughout the Middle Ages and even earlier, dating back to stone tablets found in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. It was Gerald Gardner who adopted the term Book of Shadows as a title for his own coven's grimoire, which was meant to be kept secret from all but the initiated members of his coven. The material was added to and revised as time went on, with the understanding that these practices should not become static and fixed, but should instead remain dynamic, with new generations of witches adding and subtracting as they saw fit. So your Book of Shadows should be ever-changing. It should grow as you grow, change as you change, and you're going to figure out what works and what doesn't work for you, and that you're going to see that in your Book of Shadows if you're documenting everything. But creating and maintaining a Book of Shadows is not a requirement, but it can be a really valuable tool for a variety of reasons. It's the best way to keep all your most important information regarding your spiritual practices in one place. Many witches and Wiccans have at least a handful of books in their personal libraries that contain favorite spells, rituals, and other knowledge, and flipping through them can find what you're looking for isn't the most efficient way to get things done. But as you build your practice, you can start recording the information you use the most in your Book of Shadows. You can also read aloud from it during rituals rather than trying to memorize everything all at once. And of course, it's an excellent place to record tried and true spell work for future reference, as well as information about your favorite magical ingredients. So I would personally recommend trying to start one. Just start seeing what works for you and just writing stuff down. And if it doesn't work, scratch it out. Like, don't worry about, don't make it harder than it has to be. But now we're going to get into this last bit, and that's how you make a Book of Shadows. So if you are a solitary practitioner, the contents, order, and appearance of your book is entirely up to you. Some people like to have a fancy journal that's like embossed and locked, and others are happy to decorate a plain black notebook, which is what I have. I know that mine doesn't have to be fancy. You can even try and buy a dedicated blank Book of Shadows online, which they do have, but they can get pretty pricey. Even some people keep their Book of Shadows on an electronic device, and some even publish theirs online. Like, you can find grimoire pages all over the internet, which is also very valuable when learning to do certain things. So I certainly suggest getting a Book of Shadows and just taking your time with it, because it's what's going to help you really achieve what you're wanting. But guys, that is all I have for you. This episode just flew by. This has got to be one of my favorite ones I've done so far, and I know I've only done a few, but I don't know. There's just something about talking about altar tools and making your altar that just, I love mine. I have mine in a corner of my room. It has everything that I need on there. It's just so pretty. It just makes my heart happy. I don't think I've shown pictures of it online. I might, if you guys are interested. But that's going to be all from me today, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below, and thank you guys so much for watching this, even though it was last minute. Like I said, all the links that I use for my research will be down below, like always. And I will see you guys next week for our 5th episode at 3 p.m. on Thursday, like always. And that one is going to be over Samhain, and I'm going to be doing a brief overview of the Sabbats. But that's going to be all from me, and I will see you guys next Thursday. Bye!